Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops. I feel I should say it like that every single time, but I won't. I will spare you. It gets tiresome after a while. Anyway, released in 1994 for the Sega Genesis from Time Warner Interactive, featuring the vocal talents of one Dick Vitale, famed sportscaster of college basketball, who later transitioned to famed sportscaster of NBA games. And I'm guessing Time Warner wanted to use this guy's name for basketball video games the same way EA used John Madden's for football. And, well, there's a billion Madden NFL video games out there, but only one Dick Vitale Awesome Baby College Hoops, which is probably for the best, but I wouldn't necessarily blame it on old Dickie V because his vocal bits are not only plentiful, but also very energetic. Every call this guy makes is full-blown charisma and energy, even with that trademark Sega Genesis sound crunch. He brings a vibe to the game that elevates it as a whole, and look, I don't watch a whole lot of sports, I'll be honest there, but I've sampled some Dick Vitale on YouTube, and yeah, I get why they'd want to make a game with this name and his voice on it. If only that translated over to the cover, which is just some random college player shot with a cutout of Dick Vitale slapped on without any real care. Not awesome, baby. Dickie V deserves better than that. Now, if you want, you do have the option to control the amount of Dick Vitale you wish to subject yourself to during gameplay, whether it's a lot of it, motor mouth, a little of it, or just turn it off and be done with it entirely. But if you do turn off Dickie V, you may rest assured that you are going to hell, because he brings much needed energy to an otherwise mediocre basketball game. The whole game is presented and played on a 3D rotating court gimmick, something that was adopted on the Super Nintendo with a couple of games, namely NCAA Basketball and NHL Stanley Cup. Basically, the camera follows the ball and whoever's in possession of it at the time, and when the other team takes control, the camera rotates to the other side to see the other side of the court. Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops is the only Genesis sports game to boast this style of play, and look, regardless of the end result, you've got to admire the temerity on the part of the former Tengen-turned-Time Warner Interactive to attempt something like this on a console that normally isn't known for it. And I'll give it this much, College Hoops at least looks better than the two aforementioned Super Nintendo games. Both NCAA and Stanley Cup had games that took place in the middle of an endless void, devoid of life and substance. College Hoops, at least, had the decency to add in a crowd in the background. Not the greatest looking crowd, but it's a step up at least. They even added some banners on top, including for something called The Rock. Never knew they were a fan of Don Morocco. The problem with this style of presentation is that even on a system that was more than capable of pulling off these effects without a hitch, it doesn't quite work. And while College Hoops could be commended for trying something different, it also doesn't quite work. For one thing, the game runs a bit on the slow side of things, at least on the default speed setting. The game does have 6 speed settings that you could play with the highest setting being dubbed Ludicrous Speed. This is footage being played on said setting. Now I don't know about you, but this does not look like Ludicrous Speed. No one's turning plaid on this thing. Let's get some other stuff out of the way before we go deep into this one, though. This is college basketball, so you've got a bunch of states to choose from with no funny names. Well, no Carolina, I guess, counts as a funny name, I guess, I suppose. No individual colleges or anything like that, which is kind of funny in a game called College Hoops, but whatever. Neat little features that you could actually rename teams if you wanted to, and while there's no battery backup to save these names, the fact that they included this little tidbit amuses me to no end. Now that is Slam Jam Dicky Wiki Baby, or what? Look, I don't know any Vitale speak, but apparently the manual, if you have it, has a Vitale to English guide that you could reference, and I don't know, you could find that shit online somewhere if you wanted to, but whatever. You can either play a practice game, aka a single exhibition game, partake in a tournament for a championship, or play a single 2-on-2 slam-fast game, which is basically 2-on-2 basketball. Other features include the aforementioned speed setting, a difficulty setting of which there are 3, the option to toggle graphic detail to either high or low, which, to be honest with you, I don't know the difference between the two, time limit toggling, and there's also a password gimmick to resume your tournament aspirations and such. Anyway, you start a game, pick a team, set up your lines, and you're playing some college hoops, baby, with no actual college teams, only states. Anyway, I assume you know how basketball works. You try to get the ball into the other team's hoop, or basket, whatever you want to call it. You keep the other team from getting the ball into your hoop or basket or whatever you want to call it. You do this for a determinate amount of time, spanning 2 halves, and by the end, whoever has the most points wins. Your controls comprise A to shoot, C to pass, and B will toggle one of 3 plays for the rest of your AI-controlled team to follow. On the defensive front, you could switch players with A, try to block with C, and B again toggles more plays, or something like that. I don't have the manual for this thing, which is a loaner from a buddy of mine along with another game that we'll look at right after, but the controls were easy to figure out, and for what it's worth, they are somewhat responsive at times, to the point where once I'm in possession of a ball and as the screen is turning, I'll somehow tap a button and start shooting towards the hoop before it's even on screen. So I don't know if you could blame controls working too well when the rest of the game doesn't, but whatever. It's a fairly functional basketball game in theory. You could play with or without fouls, you have line substitutions, you can call timeouts, basic things of that nature. It's safe to say that it's a fair approximation of the sport of basketball that you could get with this format. But the style of presentation is what hurts the game. Runs fairly slowly even on the most ludicrous speed setting. The frame rate, let's be honest, is quite bad even if you have the graphics setting low, which doesn't do much of anything actually. And just the way it's done, one team controlling the ball is always facing one direction, and if the ball goes to the other team, it changes perspective. You never have a full grasp of what's going on because the focus is always on the ball and whoever's in possession of it. And even if you're moving backwards, the camera just zooms outward instead of turning around to adjust your field of vision. That's what ultimately hampers Dick Vitale's college hoops and why this style of sports game didn't really last all that long. Oh well. At least the audio portion is pretty solid. Like I said, the Dickie V vocal bits are what elevates this game, and without that, why even bother? Quite a few sampled sound effects being used on the chord. They sound pretty good by Genesis standards. A bit of crunch or a bit of roughness, but that's to be expected. And you've got some high-octane menu music to greet you, including a very familiar drum beat from a very familiar song from a very famous band that I have no clue how this got past anybody, but whatever. There you go, it's in there. The in-game music, on the other hand, is a bit of a mixed bag, both in shifting tones and instrumentations. I'll take it or leave it. You could turn that off if you want to, but the game sounds a bit barren without it. The best way I could describe Dick Vitale's awesome baby college hoops on the Sega Genesis is that it's an interesting failure if nothing else, attempting to recreate a style of sports game presentation achieved by the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 capabilities on a console that isn't known for that sort of thing, and playing it only serves to emphasize why this style doesn't quite work here, especially when the SNES's own efforts weren't that much better. That said, it might be worth a shot if you're into weird and interesting 16-bit concepts, or if you're just needing more Dickie V in your life for some reason, but otherwise there are plenty of better basketball games out there that do the sport a better service than this one does.